Thank you for turning to page 121. Oh, how giants have grown. This video is about the differences in figures and stats of giants in AD&D, basically from first to second. Now, the figures before you are the old Relpartha Grenadier giants. We have, this guy's basically some kind of ogre. The second guy is a fire giant, a frost giant, another frost giant, and a storm giant. These are all my old Grenadier, Relpartha giants. I loved giants back in the day. I still do. I just want to update them a little bit with what WizKids is doing these days to show the difference. And in my opinion, no offense guys, but the improvement. I really like these new giants. They add a lot more to it. I'm going to show one more thing for perspective. There's an old school 25mm figure in comparison to these older giants. As you can see, this dude is pretty small compared to them. Well, I'm going to put the new giants out there from WizKids, and we're going to compare the size and then a little bit about the stats changes that went from first edition AD&D to second edition AD&D and why we use them. Just 1 second. Okay, here we go. There's the older guys right there, all metal. And then we pan down to some of the newer ones. The Frost Ice Giant Mage, the Frost Giant Jarl, some type of Temporal Giant Mage, a Stone Giant, and a Frost Giant. These are all from WizKids. These are really, really nice. I like these giants, and as you can see, scale-wise, they're still pretty darn close. They're not crazy, but they're pretty close. There's our little buddy. For comparison, put him back here a little bit more. There you go. As you can see, still, no pun intended, dwarfed by them. And he should be. He is, after all, just a regular humanoid size. Now I'm going to bring out a couple of the even larger giants. Okay, as you can see, now we're getting crazy big. These are some really, really large giants. I love the frost giants. That lady's a cloud giant. Storm giant. And then over here, a storm giantess. I like also that there are female giants. That adds a lot of variety, and frankly I've incorporated some of that into my gameplay. Giants have grown. The statistics in D&D roughly went up about 5 dice. So from first edition AD&D, when you have a hill giant at about 8 dice, hill giant in the second edition AD&D is around 13 dice. Now, we did as a group go over to that level. We liked that the creatures had more hit dice, a little more difficult to deal with in combat. I love the scale of these giants. I love the detail of these giants. I think WizKids did a phenomenal job on these guys. The paint jobs are excellent. The poses are really good. Any kind of bent spear like you see on the lady there, easily fixed with a little warm water. Same with the sword on this gentleman, which actually from this angle looks a bit like a scimitar. Again, you can see my little buddy standing there. Little forced perspective, he doesn't look too bad. Well, let's scooch him up a little bit. Now he's in trouble. That's a small guy. I like how these giants work. They are really, really big. They've done some scaling like this also with dragons in the current figures from WizKids. Dragons also saw a big, big upgrade from AD&D First Edition to Second Edition. Now, to be clear, my Greyhawk campaign is set in AD&D First Edition. However, I've never been a purist. I use plenty of AD&D Second Edition rules, have read all the AD&D Second Edition rules I've been able to get my hands on, and incorporated a lot of them. We don't do max out of 10 hit dice fireballs. If you're 20th level MU, you get 20 dice fireballs. Same with magic missiles. And we have periodically upped the hit points and even hit dice of some of the creatures that we encounter in the game. But we do play AD&D. I'm just, again, AD&D First Edition. I am not a purist, or never have been. We even have elements of Third Edition incorporated into our game. Specifically, quite a few of the Third Edition spells that I've rewritten and worked into our game. So, that's just a little size comparison, statistical comparison. Like I said, they've gotten tougher, somewhere in the average of 4 to 5 dice from D&D to AD&D. I know there are a ton of D&D First Edition purists out there who only want to play First Edition rules. That's fine. Your game is your own. You enjoy it however you like it. I, on the other hand, have always thought anything that promotes the game and makes it more fun is absolutely worth including. I have long included second edition rules in my game. One other thing I want to show, even though I know technically they're not giants, these last two guys. These guys are Titans. I love these guys too. Big, imposing dudes. Their actual size, they're about 5 inches tall. That's huge. Again, if we bring my little buddy up, we can see that he's physically way outclassed. So I realize again, Titans are not giants, but they sure are giant size. Again, I really like these products from WizKids. I'm a relatively new convert to a lot of their plastic stuff. I find it a lot easier to store than the old metal ones, of which I have hundreds. But I also like the diversity I'm able to get. I've never owned a Titan figure before. Now I do. I've never owned a female giant before. Now I do. I like what WizKids is doing with these, and I will continue to get my hands on these. I also paint some of my own figures, although that's nothing to write home about. Any of these nicely painted giants over here that you see, I did not do. Players in our group have done them. I have no real skill with painting. This gentleman also was done by one of my players. His name is Mike. He does a phenomenal job. So thank you, Mike, for that. So that's it. I just wanted to do a quick overview of giants, how they have grown, both physically on the table and statistically from first edition to second edition. Now again, since second edition is about 30 years old and about 20 years out of print, none of this should be a revelation. It's simply something informational I thought I'd bring to you. That's it for today. Thank you for your time. If you like what you saw, I hope you come back. Thank you very much. Goodbye from page 121. Well, that closes the book on another episode of page 121. Please leave your comments below, and if you enjoyed what you saw, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.